If you're considering a move or a real estate purchase, not all affordable places are good deals. This video lays out 8 U.S. cities that, based on 2024-2025 data, combine high violent crime, entrenched poverty, weak job markets, failing public services, and environmental or infrastructure risks. I'll walk city by city through the numbers: crime per 100K, poverty, unemployment, housing dynamics, school performance, health and environmental flags, plus recent trends. Give a concise verdict for movers and investors, and end with clear rules you can use to vet any market. Stay with me. The goal isn't to sensationalize, it's to show you where the real long-term risks are, so you don't get stuck with a property or lifestyle you regret. Number 1, Memphis, Tennessee. Why you should think twice. Memphis shows one of the highest violent crime rates in the nation, roughly 2,500 violent incidents per 100,000 residents and a total crime rate near 9,400 per 100,000. That's an immediate safety headwind for families and landlords concerned about tenant turnover and insurance costs. Recent 2025 data brings a mixed picture. Memphis police reported the lowest overall crime in 25 years for the first 8 months of 2025, with robbery, burglary, and larceny also at multi-year lows, and murder and sexual assault down to 6- and 20-year lows, respectively. Those trends are encouraging, but the baseline is still high. Statistically, a Memphian faces about a 1 in 10 chance of being a crime victim. Poverty is deep, 22.6% overall and 36.3% child poverty in 2024. Job market signals are weak. Unemployment climbed to about 6.3% mid-2025. Even as employers list tens of thousands of openings, the risk is a mismatch between low-wage local jobs and the skills or wages needed to lift families out of poverty. Housing is relatively affordable. The average rent around $1,000 and median rents about $1,300, but rent increases and low vacancy, roughly a 5% vacancy rate, mean competition and rising prices that outpace incomes in some neighborhoods. Education underperforms. Math and reading proficiencies sit well below Tennessee averages, and many schools rank near the bottom. Health is another concern. Memphis is the U.S. asthma capital, with Shelby County showing high ER visit rates for asthma, reflecting poor air quality. Environmental risks include frequent ozone alerts and flood vulnerability along the Mississippi. Buildings face a meaningful long-term flood risk index, and recent extreme precipitation events underline that exposure. Transit is limited. MATA runs about 32 bus routes, and connectivity is highly unequal. The top 1% of earners enjoy roughly a third of transit connectivity, while the bottom 71% have only about 7% a structural barrier to accessing jobs. Verdict: Memphis may look affordable on paper, but safety risk, poor public services, health burdens, and economic stagnation make it a high-risk place to relocate for families or to hold investment properties unless you have hyper-local knowledge and an ability to manage crime and maintenance costs. Number 2, Detroit, Michigan. The complex comeback that's still fragile. Detroit's story is complicated. Revitalization headlines about downtown lofts and new restaurants mask systemic problems across most neighborhoods. Violent crime remains far above national averages. Various 2024-2025 measures show homicide rates around the high 30s per 100,000 and total crime roughly triple national medians. Property crime is also elevated. The labor market is unstable. Unemployment figures have swung, and as of mid-2025, recorded rates near 8.9% in some reports, far above the national average, and median household income sits near $38,000. Infrastructure failures are a day-to-day problem. Recent years have seen major water main breaks that forced evacuations and prolonged displacement, frequent multi-hour power outages for many residents, and a large share of non-working streetlights that make public spaces feel unsafe at night. Housing shows paradoxes. Vacancy and blight remain serious. Though vacancy has fallen from peak levels, thousands of lots and abandoned buildings continue to drag down neighborhood values, while median sale prices have risen in the downtown market, creating uneven affordability. Schools and healthcare access remain constrained. Years of enrollment collapse and financial distress left the district with major performance and facility problems. Primary care access is limited in many neighborhoods. Auto insurance and other living costs are unexpectedly high. Detroit residents face some of the nation's steepest premiums, which eats into already low incomes. Climate and environment aren't the main immediate story here, but the legacy of industrial pollution and aging infrastructure raises long-term maintenance costs. Verdict: Detroit may be a speculative option for investors targeting downtown turnaround. But for families seeking stable schools, reliable utilities, and low-risk tenancy, the citywide profile remains high risk. Any move or purchase demands micro-level due diligence, neighborhood crime trends, water-sewer histories, and local school trajectories. Number 3. Gary, Indiana, deindustrialization and its long shadow. Gary is often used as a textbook example of extreme deindustrial decline. Since its peak in 1960, Gary's population has collapsed by more than 60%, a loss that destroys the tax base and municipal capacity to maintain basic services. Poverty runs near 32%, and the median household income sits under $4,000, far below national levels. Unemployment often resides in double digits, tied to the shrinkage of steel employment. Tens of thousands of properties are vacant or blighted, with some estimates putting thousands of abandoned buildings citywide. Violent crime rates and murders per 100,000 are among the highest nationally, and the presence of large numbers of vacant structures exacerbates safety problems and discourages investment. Environmental health risks are severe. Emissions from legacy steel production correlate with elevated cancer and asthma risks, and Lake County ranks extremely high for toxic releases per square mile. Healthcare infrastructure is limited. Few hospitals and clinics stretch to serve a population with concentrated needs. Recent revitalization efforts, LED streetlight programs, small housing pushes, master planning with university partners, show intent, but the scale required to reverse decades of decline is enormous. Verdict: Gary's affordability comes with structural decay. Residents trade low housing cost for weak services, high health risks, and persistent crime. Investors should avoid speculative bets unless they have public-private backing for large regeneration projects. Families should only move with a clear job offer and strong local support networks. Number 4, St. Louis, Missouri. Segregation, outmigration, and safety gaps. St. Louis combines a high violent crime profile with one of the steepest population declines among major U.S. cities. Between 2020 and 2024, the city lost over 20,000 residents, an outmigration that accelerates service decline and shrinks the tax base. Violent crime and homicide historically rank high per capita, and while early 2025 months showed significant year-over-year drops in some crime categories, the long-term baseline keeps the city near the top of national per capita comparisons. Education is a crisis in many districts. St. Louis public schools received poor ratings, and the auditor warned of budgetary and governance risks that could threaten operations if not corrected. Racial and economic segregation, symbolized by the Delmar Divide, produce vastly different outcomes for children depending on zip code. Research shows the average black family in the region would take centuries to reach the same wealth as an average white family given current trajectories. Jobs have been soft. Regional employment losses and business closures in retail and industrial sectors point to a fragile recovery outside a few downtown strongholds. Infrastructure is aging, transit gaps remain, Metrolink doesn't adequately connect many north side neighborhoods, and climate stress, extreme heat, and increased heavy precipitation events creates additional burdens as many homes and streets lack resilience. Verdict: St. Louis offers pockets of affordability and cultural assets, but the systemic segregation, governance issues in schools, and safety concerns make it a tough bet for families with children or risk-averse investors. Focus on suburbs with stronger school systems and growing jobs if you're escaping St. Louis proper. Number 5, Cleveland, Ohio. Rust Belt pain with continuing headwinds. Cleveland stands out for its high crime rates, steep poverty, and aging infrastructure. The city's crime profile puts your risk of violent victimization high compared to national norms. Residents face a 1 in 59 chance of violent crime in some recent measures, and property crime is common. Poverty is acute. Cleveland has one of the highest overall poverty rates among large U.S. cities and the highest child poverty rates, with nearly half of children under 5 living in poverty in recent data. Deindustrialization left deep scars. Job losses during COVID and prior decades mean the metro never fully recovered its manufacturing base. While health systems and hospitals are assets, the broader economy lacks diversification into many high-pay, high-growth sectors. Winters are another factor. Lake-effect snow and long, cold seasons increase heating costs and make transport and commuting harder. This is tangible, recurring cost pressure. Infrastructure is crumbling in places. Thousands of bridges statewide in poor condition, local roads degrading, and high property taxes relative to valuations in some suburbs make net living costs higher than sticker prices imply. Schools and governance have struggled, contributing to ongoing brain drain as graduates leave for coastal or Sunbelt opportunities. Verdict: Cleveland is a risky long-term move if your priority is a stable job market and family amenities. Investors should be very selective, targeting blocks with clear municipal investment and rising employer activity. Number 6, Baltimore, Maryland. Cultural assets versus systemic neglect. Baltimore's history, port economy, and university hospitals can make it attractive, but the city's social indicators remain problematic. Violent crime and homicide rates, though down from some peaks, are still above norm. Property crimes and neighborhood disorder are common. Poverty and unemployment exceed Maryland averages, and while some magnet and charter schools perform well, the overall district struggles with low proficiency and graduation problems. Wallet Hub and state assessments put much of Baltimore at the lower end for school outcomes. Infrastructure deficits appear in sanitation, vacant properties, and water systems. Sanitation complaints per capita and illegal dumping indicators point to municipal maintenance problems. Public health takes a hit. Life expectancy gaps and high chronic disease burdens appear in many neighborhoods, and behavioral health and primary care shortages mean unmet need. Environmental and lead exposure concerns persist in older housing stock, worsening health inequities. Verdict: Baltimore is attractive for young professionals or niche investors focused on downtown or waterfront redevelopment, but families and conservative investors should be cautious. Prioritize neighborhoods with demonstrable improvement in schools, declining crime rates, and strong transit access. Number 7, Camden, New Jersey. High poverty, poor housing, and environmental risk. Camden is a striking example where cheap housing coexists with poor habitability and public health hazards. Violent crime rates historically ran roughly 5 times the national average, though recent policing changes and county takeover coincide with declines. Violent crime down around 12% and homicides down roughly 30% year over year in recent snapshots, but the absolute level remains high. Median household income sits near $32,000 and more than 28% of residents live in poverty. Unemployment has been structurally elevated for years. The public school system lags badly on proficiency. Elementary and middle outcomes are very low in both math and language arts, making it a hard city for families with school-age children. Housing is inexpensive but often substandard. A meaningful share of units fail basic habitability checks and city services are stretched. Camden also scores high on environmental burden metrics. Industrial pollution, proximity to highways, and lead exposure risks combine to create health burdens and higher asthma rates. Flood risk and aging stormwater infrastructure compound those exposures in low-lying neighborhoods. Verdict: Camden's affordability masks high costs in health risk, schooling, and public safety. So for most buyers and families, the trade-offs outweigh the cheap price. Nonprofit or mission-driven investment can help, but pure market plays carry serious downside absent major public commitments. Number 8, Flint, Michigan. Public health trauma and slow recovery. Flint's situation is unique because the city suffered a catastrophic public health failure with lasting consequences. The 2014-2015 water crisis, switching the water source without corrosion control, exposed thousands of children to lead, and a Legionnaire's outbreak followed. Although pipes are being replaced and many repairs completed, trust in municipal water remains low, and health impacts have a multi-generational horizon. The local economy was gutted with the downsizing of auto manufacturing, producing high unemployment, a median household income near $36,000, and sustained poverty rates over 30% in some counts. Violent crime rates are high. Flint historically appears among the most dangerous U.S. cities per capita, and many neighborhoods remain unsafe with vacancies and demolition after decades of decline. Public services and municipal capacity have been strained by budget crises and emergency management episodes, and the stigma of the water crisis reduces investment appetite. Recovery efforts, pipe replacements, and targeted redevelopment show progress, but the pace is slow, and the health and educational impacts on children make the city a risky place to relocate for those prioritizing long-term child outcomes. Verdict: Flint's ongoing recovery work is important and necessary, but families with young kids should be cautious until there is both infrastructure closure and clear improvements in school and health outcomes. Investors face risk from slow demand and stigma. Final verdicts: who should avoid these cities? Families seeking stable schools, low crime, and reliable services should avoid these 8 cities unless they have a strong, location-specific reason to move: a secure job in a safe neighborhood, family support networks, or an employer-subsidized relocation. Passive real estate investors without local management teams should avoid broad market bets here. Specialist rehab or mission-driven projects can work, but they require local relationships, security budgets, and patience. Urban revival or impact investors who can take decade-long views, partner with public entities, and accept slow returns may find opportunity in targeted projects. That's not the same as casual buy-and-hold speculators expecting fast appreciation. Each of these cities, Memphis, Detroit, Gary, St. Louis, Cleveland, Baltimore, Camden, and Flint, has unique history, dedicated civic actors, and neighborhoods that are improving. But citywide profiles through 2024-2025 show persistent, interconnected challenges that raise risk for move decisions and most kinds of real estate investment. If you live in one of these cities, your perspective matters. Drop a detailed comment. What neighborhood is getting better, what's getting worse, and where would you move next? Don't forget to like if this helped and subscribe. Thanks for watching.